Hello everybody, my name's Nell Day. I'm one of the teacher librarians at University High School, and today I'm going to take you through this brief guide on referencing at UHS. We're going to talk about what we need to reference, why we reference our sources, and how we reference. Referencing is used in academic work when our work uses somebody else's words or their ideas. So anytime you use someone else's words or ideas, you need to acknowledge where you got those words or ideas from. This applies both if you directly quote a person, like this quote I've got here, I like a lot of things about rhubarb, using that person's exact words. And it also applies if I paraphrase someone else's ideas. So in this second quote, I've put this author's ideas into my own words, but I still need to acknowledge her. The reason that we reference is primarily to avoid plagiarism. So plagiarism comes from the Latin word for kidnapping, and plagiarism is a form of cheating that happens when we steal someone else's ideas and we don't acknowledge where we got them from. So it's trying to pretend that someone else's ideas are your own ideas, and that's quite a serious form of academic misconduct. It's very, very good in academic work, in fact essential, to use ideas from other people. It shows that you've done good research and it shows that you're engaged with wider reading on your topic, but it is absolutely crucial that you always acknowledge where you get your words and ideas from. At the University High School we use APA referencing, which is from the American Psychological Association, and this form of referencing gives a very specific way that you have to cite your sources. So it tells you what information you need to give about your source, and it tells you the order and the format that you need to give that information in. In APA, there's two main parts of the referencing. There's the reference list at the end of your paper, and there are the in-text citations that you use directly after any time you've quoted someone or paraphrased them. So looking at the reference list, at the end of your paper, you need to have a list, an alphabetical list of all the sources or all the references that you have used throughout your assignment. Your list is alphabetical by the author's last name, and in each reference you need to include certain information. The information that you include in your reference list will vary according to the type of source. So one really common source of information is books. And the way that we reference books is we give the author, the year of publication in brackets, the title of work in italics, the location, so where the publisher is, then a colon, and then the name of the publisher. And I've given you an example down there. Another really common place that we get our information from is web pages. So if you have a web page with an author, again you use the author's last name, you give the date, if you can find a date, you give the title of the page and the URL. So here you can see retrieved from plus the entire URL. So the person who's reading your work should be able to follow that link and find the source that you've used. Okay? As you know, a lot of web pages may not have an author. So they might not list an author for you. That's okay. Generally, with referencing, the important thing is to give as much information as you can. So if that information is not available, you just use a different format. So you use the title of the page in italics, publication date, and then the URL. So there's an example down there. Also, sometimes it can be tricky to find the date on websites. Just give the information that you have. To be honest, if you give the URL, it's pretty easy to find that source. We may reference newspaper articles in our academic work. Again, we give the author first. We give the year, month and day of the newspaper because they normally come out daily, the title and the name of the newspaper and the page number. And I've given you an example right there. Referencing journal articles is a bit different to newspaper articles. So I'm talking about articles from academic journals. So we give the author, the year, the article title and the title of the publication. Sometimes people get confused by this volume and issue thing. So just if you don't have information about the volume number, don't worry about it, just give the issue. If you don't have information about either, just again give as much information as you have. And for a journal article, you need to say it goes from page X to page Y, as I've done in the example there. So that's how you reference your sources in your list at the end of your paper. But as you're writing your paper, you need to put a little citation in the text whenever you quote someone's words or ideas. This is obviously called an in-text citation. So this is just a signpost which says, hey, I've used someone else's ideas. If you want to find this, go and look in my reference list. They appear in parentheses, and normally they just give the author's last name and the year. So the in-text citation consists of the author's surname, as I said, followed by the year of publication. Okay? If you don't have the author, just a bit of the title. It doesn't have to be the entire title if it's long, and the year. If you're giving a direct quote, it's good to give the page of the work that it came from. There's various ways that you can place your in-text citations in your paper. You can choose to emphasize or de-emphasize the author. So if you wanted to emphasize, I've read this guy Jones, he's a leading source on my topic, you could start with his name and say, Jones, 1965, concluded that blah, blah, blah. If you want to de-emphasize the author's name, you can say, it has been found that, and then give the author's name at the end of your quote. So either of these is correct. They're both correct ways of citing, but you have options for how you can present that information. It's very important that every citation in your paper has a matching entry in your reference list. So each citation should be findable in your reference list. Likewise, you shouldn't have citations in your reference list that don't have an in-text citation in your paper. Okay, so there has to be one-to-one correspondence between those two things. So just some final reminders. Referencing is a really important part of your academic writing, and it's a really, really key skill to develop, especially if you're going to go on to tertiary study and do academic writing there. If you're not sure if you need to reference something, so this applies particularly when you paraphrase ideas, if you're not sure if that's an idea that needs to be referenced, go ahead and reference it anyway. You won't get in trouble for doing that, but you might get in trouble if you don't reference where you should. Your main goal is to make sure that other people are able to locate the information that you've used. So when I read your paper, I should be able to go to your reference list and read for myself the sources that you've used. And this is a really important thing when you're critically analysing someone's work. So if you cite a newspaper article, I need to go back to that newspaper article and be able to critically look at how you've used that source. Again, if you're not sure how to reference something and you're worried about formatting it correctly or do I have all the information, the most important thing is just to put as much information as you possibly can. Here are some more sources to help you find information about referencing. The University High School LibGuides site has a page on referencing that you can use. Melbourne University has a great tool called Recite that will actually format references for you. I would say when you use automatic tools to format your references, do look at them afterwards and make sure that they're correct. You actually need to check that. You can't guarantee that the computer will do it correctly. There's a site called Cite This For Me which has an APA style guide, and that has tips for APA referencing that you might need to look at if you're trying to do more complicated things. And also remember that a great resource at this school is the staff. So you can ask your teacher or you can come to the library and ask the librarian. We're always very, very happy to help you with your referencing. That's an area of expertise for us and we're used to answering student questions. So you're very, very welcome to come and talk to us anytime. That's it for me on this referencing guide. Thanks for listening and we look forward to seeing you in the library.